This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Joyce Nussbaum, Highland Park, New Jersey. Good Things to Eat as Suggested by Rufus Estes. Section 13, Rolls, Bread, and Muffins. Breakfast rolls. Sift a quart of flour and stir into it a saltspoonful of sugar, a cup of warm milk, 2 tablespoonfuls of melted shortening, and 2 beaten eggs. Dissolve a quarter of a cake of compressed yeast in a little warm milk and beat in last of all. Set the dough in a bowl to rise until morning. Early in the morning, make lightly and quickly into rolls and set to rise near the range for 20 minutes. Egg rolls. 2 cups flour, 1 level teaspoon salt, 2 level teaspoons baking powder, 2 level teaspoons lard, 2 level teaspoons butter, 1 egg, 1/2 cup milk. Sift together the flour, salt, and baking powder. Work in the shortening with the fingers. Add the egg well beaten and mixed with the milk. Mix well, toss onto a floured board and knead lightly. Roll out and cut in 2-inch squares. Place a 1/2 inch apart in a buttered pan. Gash the center of each with a sharp knife. Brush over with sugar and water and bake 15 minutes in a hot oven. Excellent tea rolls. Scald 1 cup of milk and turn into the mixing bowl. When nearly cool, add a whole yeast cake and beat in 1½ cups of flour. Cover and let rise. Add 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 level teaspoon of salt, 2 beaten eggs, and 1/3 cup of butter. Add flour enough to make a dough that can be kneaded. Cover and let rise. Roll out 1/2 inch thick, cut in rounds. Brush 1 heel each with melted butter. Fold and press together. Set close together in the pan, cover with a cloth, let rise, and bake. Light luncheon rolls. Heat 1 cup of milk to the scalding point in a double boiler. Add 1 rounding tablespoon of butter, 1 level tablespoon of sugar, and 1 level teaspoon of salt. Stir and set into cold water until lukewarm, then add 1 yeast cake dissolved in 1/4 cup of lukewarm water and 2 cups of flour. Beat hard for 2 or 3 minutes, cover, and let rise until very light. Add flour to make a dough that can be kneaded and let rise again. Knead, shape into small rolls. Set them close together in a buttered baking pan. Let rise light and bake in a quick oven. A pan of rolls. Scald 1 pint of milk and add 1 rounding tablespoon of lard. Mix in 1 quart of sifted bread flour, 1/4 cup of sugar, a saltspoon of salt, and 1/2 yeast cake dissolved in 1/2 cup of lukewarm water. Cover and let rise overnight. In the morning, roll 1/2 inch thick, cut into rounds, spread a little soft butter on 1/2 of each, fold over and press together. Let rise until light and bake in a quick oven. Rolls may be raised lighter than a loaf of bread because the rising is checked as soon as they are put into the oven. Raised graham rolls. Scald 2 cups of milk and melt in it 2 level tablespoons of butter and 1/2 level teaspoon of salt. When cool, add 2 tablespoons of molasses and 1/2 yeast cake dissolved in a little warm water. Add white flour to make a thin batter. Knead until smooth and set in a warm place until light. When well risen, stir in wholemeal to make a dough just stiff enough to knead. Knead until elastic, then place it in the original bulk. Flour the board and turn the risen dough out carefully. Pat out 1 inch thick with the rolling pin and make into small rolls. Place these rolls close together in the pan, brush over with milk and let rise until very light. Bake in a quick oven. Rye breakfast cakes. Beat the egg light, add 1/2 cup of sugar, 2 cups of milk, a saltspoon of salt, 1 1/2 cups of rye meal, 1 1/2 cups of flour, and 3 level teaspoons of baking powder. Bake in a hot greased gem pan. Breakfast cakes. Sift 1 cup of cornmeal, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 2 level teaspoons of sugar together. Stir in 1 cup of thick sour milk, 1/2 tablespoon melted butter, 1 well-beaten egg, and 1/2 teaspoon of soda, measured level. Beat hard and bake in gem pans in a quick oven. Scotch oat cakes can be either fried on a griddle or broiled over a fire. The meal for this purpose should be ground fine. Put a quart of the meal in a baking dish with a teaspoonful of salt. Pour in little by little just enough cold water to make a dough, and roll out quickly before it hardens into a circular sheet about 1/4 of an inch thick. Cut into 4 cakes and bake slowly for about 20 minutes on an iron griddle. Do not turn but toast after they are cooked. Scotch scones. 2 cups flour, 4 level teaspoons baking powder, 2 level teaspoons sugar, 1 level teaspoon salt, 3 level tablespoons butter, 1 whole egg or 2 yolks, 1 cup buttermilk. Sift together the flour, baking powder, sugar, and salt, and work in the butter with the fingers. Then add the buttermilk and egg well beaten. Mix well, turn onto floured board, and knead lightly. Roll out 1/2 inch thick. Cut with small biscuit cutter and cook on a hot griddle, turning once. Log cabin toast for breakfast. This is made up of long strips of bread cut to the thinness of afternoon tea sandwiches, then toasted a delicate brown. All are buttered lightly and piled on a hot plate log cabin fashion. Old-fashioned rusks. At night, make a sponge as for bread with 2 cups of scalded milk, a teaspoon of salt, yeast, and flour. In the morning, put 1/2 cup of butter into 2 cups of milk and heat until the butter is barely melted. Add this to the sponge, 1 cup of sugar, and 3 beaten eggs. Add flour to make a dough that can be kneaded. Let rise very light. Roll out 1½ inches thick, cut in round cakes, let rise, and bake a deep yellow color. Waffles Southern style. 1 pint of flour, 1 pint buttermilk, 1 egg, 1/2 teaspoon soda dissolved in little water, 1 teaspoon sugar, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1 tablespoon cornmeal, 1 tablespoon melted butter. Mix as any other batter cake or waffles. Whole wheat popovers. Put 2/3 cup of whole wheat meal, 1 2/3 cup of white flour, and 1/2 level teaspoon of salt into a sifter and sift 3 times. Pour 2 cups of milk on slowly and stir until smooth. Beat 2 eggs 5 minutes, add to the first mixture and beat again for 2 minutes. Turn into hot greased iron gem pans and bake 1/2 hour in a rather quick oven. Berry muffins. Mix 2 cups sifted flour, 1/2 teaspoon salt, and 2 rounded teaspoons baking powder. Cream 1/4 cup of butter with 1/2 cup sugar, add well-beaten yolk of 1 egg, 1 cup milk, the flour mixture, and white of egg beaten stiff. Stir in carefully 1 heaped cup blueberries which have been picked over, rinsed, dried, and rolled in flour. Bake in muffin pans 20 minutes. Buttermilk muffins. Sift 4 cups of flour, 1/4 cup of cornmeal, and 1 level teaspoon each of salt and soda 3 times. Beat 2 eggs well. Add a level tablespoon of sugar, 4 cups of buttermilk, the dry ingredients, and beat hard for 2 minutes. Bake in muffin rings or hot greased gem pans. 1/2 the recipe will be enough for a small family. English muffins. 1 pint milk, 2 level tablespoons shortening, butter or lard, 2 level teaspoons sugar, 1 level teaspoon salt, 1 yeast cake dissolved in 1/4 cup lukewarm water, flour. Scald the milk and add the shortening, sugar, and salt. When lukewarm, add the yeast and sufficient flour to make a good batter. Here one's judgment must be used. Beat well and let rise until double in bulk. Warm and butter a griddle and place on it buttered muffin rings. Fill not quite half full of the batter, cover and cook slowly until double, then heat the griddle quickly and